Welcome to the Mojo podcast with me, Richard Stokes. Well, I hope you've had a good week, a better week. We're all adjusting and adapting to the situation we find ourselves in, which is incredible if you think about it. We are so resilient, even if you're telling yourself that you're not. Everything you're doing for yourself and for your family proves your resilience and courage in the face of the greatest challenge most of us have ever experienced. Just reflect on that for a while. And with that reflection comes an acceptance that the world has changed, potentially to a very profound degree, and things may not be the same again. And that acceptance may leave you feeling with what feels like grief. And that's exactly what it is. Grief at loss. The loss of a loved one, a job, a business, a plan, grieving the loss of freedom for your kids to go to school and play with friends. We're all experiencing this right now. But out of those feelings and emotions will come learning, answers, and new ways. This week's episode is about courage in the face of disease. Indeed, finding beauty in disease. My guest this week is Carrie Montgomery, and she knows a thing or two about resilience, courage, and adaptability. Developed in the face of a long history of medical issues in her life, from breaking her back as an 18-year-old to most recently encephalitis at the end of 2019, she has used each episode to learn and adapt her approach to life. So I just knew she'd be a great source of inspiration right now. Over time, she's learned the hard way, as I say, to find the beauty in disease. When conventional medicine couldn't resolve things for her, she went on her own learning journey to better understand what was happening to her. This agency both helped her with her health and provided the inspiration for her eponymously named business, where she creates transformation for women from the inside out. Carrie is many things: an entrepreneur, dog mum, stylist, visionary, challenger of convention, survivor, empath, Jane of all trades. The list goes on. She's lived an amazing life so far. It was an honest, open and fascinating conversation that feels very well timed for now. I was also grateful Carrie was ready to join the show, as I became conscious that my last 5 guests have been brilliant men, which is great, but I wanted to hear a powerful female voice on the show again, and Carrie fits that bill superbly. I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did. Please do subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and that short review on Apple Podcasts. Please enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to the Mojo podcast, another episode in isolation, or as I'm calling it now, other people are calling it during the Great Pause, which sounds a little bit more positive than lockdown or quarantine. As I said, my wonderful guest this week is Carrie Montgomery, and usually Carrie and I both live on the lovely island of Ibiza, and in normal times we would do this in a nice bar somewhere on a beach, so you could hear some of the atmosphere, but we're actually about 4 miles apart, I think, Carrie, aren't we today?
Yeah.
And you're on the other end of a line. So Carrie, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying the day so far. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. I'm excited.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I know we've been talking about this for a while, and we'll get into kind of why we were slightly delayed getting together, not just by COVID-19, but by other things.
Yeah.
But I
Other
always
viruses.
start out with other viruses, exactly, and we'll come on to that. But in terms of how you're doing today, how is your mojo today, Carrie?
My mojo's pretty good. I actually I cleaned this morning. It was just sometimes, it's like I either get up and meditate or I get up and I do a deep clean. So today was like a deep clean to get my energy going, and I took my dog for a nice walk in the woods, which has been nice to get out of the city for a little while and be in the countryside. So yeah, I'm
Lovely.
feeling harnessed and mellow at the same time.
Harnessed and mellow. What 2 tremendous words. Can you tell me a little bit more about harnessed? I'm especially interested in harnessed for some reason. Tell me about that.
Yeah, harnessing is really about like collecting yourself together and like being prepared, being present, being comfortable in your skin. And, if this was yesterday, like I don't know why I had crazy anxiety, and I tried to do everything I know to clear the energy from my body, and it just was at a heightened level. And I didn't sleep the night before. So I'm really glad we didn't do this yesterday, because I would have been a bit like on edge
Mm.
in the way I communicated. And so today I just feel more in my body, more relaxed. Yeah, and mellow. Yeah. But harnessing your energy is really about pulling yourself together in a way that brings you to a place of ease.
I love that. And I guess you having your own awareness of where you are on that level of how
Mm.
harnessed and how mellow you are, I guess is really, really important, as you say, in terms of just how much energy you're going to have, how in service of what you're doing you're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like if you have a cup of coffee and it's like too caffeinated or it's too strong, or you drink 2 cups and you're like, you're wired and something's pushing you, but you kind of aren't conscious that you had too much coffee, and you're like feeling like you're being pushed by the world, instead of saying, like, okay, I'm present inside my body and I'm calling in the things that I need and desire and want. And I mean, you could say it's like kind of being like a control freak, but I think it's, for me, it's a very conscious way of existing. When, I used to live in New York City and it was just this constant push, this constant drive. You got to go, 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 go. And then you end up at the end of the day so depleted, you have nothing left to give to the world or yourself.
Right. And do you see a real difference in kind of what you've got to give now you're living in Ibiza, and we'll come in a second to what drew you to this island shortly. And you say right now you're in the countryside. That difference between island living and city living, do you see a massive difference?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, well, I would say like before COVID-19, I definitely like pushed myself to have a social life, but I work by myself at home. I have a very comfortable existence in my own little world, and I have a social life, and there was a little bit of like pushing myself to stay active and be engaged and be a part of and have community and connection, um and there's a beauty about right now of not having to push for that social life and just be. There's never been a time in my life that I've been healthy, right? I've had to not do things in life because I've been sick. And so I'm like, oh, like I'm not, in and out of the hospital right now. And I can just be and do my work and be present for myself, my dog, my life, my clients. And that, I mean, whew, it's a beautiful thing. And it's, city life to island life, it is a much slower pace.
So let's kind of jump into, when we were talking pre this, and we had a great chat around what the theme for today could be,
Yeah.
and this idea of finding beauty in dis-ease,
Mm.
and obviously the play on word with dis-ease and disease there. Can you tell us a little bit about, your story and why this is particularly pertinent to you, historically, and why now? And I know this is going to be part of your Ibiza story as well.
Yeah. I mean, I literally, I came to Ibiza 2 years ago for a vacation, and I was like, okay, just a 2 week, come see a friend, go to a yoga retreat. And I did a quantum healing during my yoga retreat, and it was on my birthday, and I woke up and I was like, oh my god, I have to move here. Like my body's next level of health is here, and I just need to commit to
Mm.
it. And I moved 3 months later. I went home. My lease just happened to be up on my apartment. I applied for a visa. I got it 3 months later. I got my dog set up to move with me, and I booked a ticket before I had a place here or my visa confirmed. And I just said, I'm going. This is the date I'm going. And I arrived.
Wow.
Yeah. And everything worked out. I lived for that moment of taking risk. And I've um I've gone through multiple medical, I would call them like clusters or disasters. um I definitely had some things wrong with my central nervous system. um I broke my back when I was 18, so I had a spinal fusion then, which
Oh
then sort
wow.
of set off a trajectory of trauma response inside my body, which then made my central nervous system highlight with like pain dysregulation. And then I would come back
Mm.
to a time where it'd be fine, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm fine. And then I would go into a more stressful period in life and it would flare back up. And so in and out over like 25 years, I'd be completely fine. And then I would crash and I'd be completely disabled. I mean, like not able to walk. So,
Right.
and my hormones, I had a major issue with my hormones. So I've had about 13 surgeries over 20 years. And
Gosh.
the last, so 10 of them were to remove fibroids and endometriosis from my uterus and ovaries. And the last one, I was dying and I was bleeding out, and they had to do an emergent hysterectomy.
Oh my
And
God.
so that was about
Wow.
5 years ago. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of, I'd spent 2 years prior to that, I'd spent $40,000 doing a natural hormone detox to try and save my uterus. And I became anorexic through that detox because I was literally not eating anything. I was like kale, celery juice, carrots. It was kind of insane. So I did a little bit more harm to my body during that, thinking that I was doing something healthy. And, I tried so many things to have doctors give me the answers, and I was always looking for it outside myself. And after, the hysterectomy, there's been a journey of recovering from the grief of that loss, and
Mm,
the desire to bear a child and not be able
yeah.
to, and just coming to terms with that, and my own identity as a woman of like, well, what
Yeah.
am I worth now if I can't have a baby?
Yeah.
Which is weird to say, but I think every woman who wants to have a baby does go through that. um,
Mm.
and then the 7 years ago, I started to have something called episodic paralysis, and it was like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and like I think 10 years ago, I had been diagnosed with Lyme disease. So there's all these different layers of diseases in my body, and nobody really has the truth about what was going on. Like, no one. I'd go to a new doctor, they'd say, oh, you have this. I go to another doctor, they say, oh, you have trauma. I go to another doctor and they say, oh, you've autoimmune disease. So, as I'm looking at what's happening right now in the world, I have great peace to think that the journey that I've been on is actually like sort of sane and sound, because what the world has experienced is what I've been living for about 10, 15 years. And
Right.
it's there's a weird sense of peace in that for me, because it makes me realize how much the medical system doesn't really know what's going on. And yes, there's some things that are great, like that really work out well, but there are a lot of things when it comes to disease care that they don't understand. Within a week at one point, I had a neurologist tell me that I had PTSD, and that's why I had these episodic paralysis. And then at the same time, I had a pulmonologist tell me that I had something called dysautonomia, which is a dysregulation of the central nervous system. Now, your central nervous
Mm,
system is just supposed to operate on its own. And it's not like you tell your heart to beat or your stomach to digest. You do things to like
yeah.
support that and regulate it. But
Yeah.
mine would go haywire out of the blue. So I kind of took this information and I was like, all right, I'm going to put myself into an incubator. And I'd already, become a coach. So I've been coaching since 2010, and teaching doctors lifestyle medicine and nutrition in New York City. And when I left my corporate job doing that, I started just coaching, becoming an online coach. And um, so I took the principles that I learned in coaching and everything that I've known from 25 years of healing techniques and medical stuff and studying, science, and really trying to get an idea of anatomy in the body and physicality. I used to teach Pilates and gyrotonic to understand movement and power and strength, studied nutrition, taught nutrition to doctors. And I just decided to put myself in this incubator of like, okay, all of these things that I've done, physically done, doctors are telling me that it's not working. And that's when I just started to tap into the fact that we're actually energy, and everything we create in the world comes from energy. The computer comes from energy. Ideas that are born into the world are initially a spark of energy. So I became image and brand consultant, personal stylist, personal development, personal branding, and I fused all that together to help women become powerful inside their bodies. So I took everything that was disempowering me around
Mm.
being conscious in my body and started to look at it on the energetic level. And so if I had a feeling coming into my body, say it's fear, I do the mental thing of like, what am I afraid of? Like, what is this? What am I feeling? What was a trigger? And I get analytical, which is more like psychological. And then I would really just start to say, okay, like, how do we transform this sensation? How do I let it go? Like, how do I move through it? Because I don't need to hold on to this. I mean, my diseases, the dis-ease in my body has been the training ground for work that's helped women completely transform their lives.
Right, right. So and thank you for your openness and honesty in talking us through that full, traumatic, difficult history. But what is obviously the reason we're telling this story and your story is the positivity that's come out of it, the understanding, the learning that you're now applying in your work. So I guess, maybe this is a really obvious question, but do you feel you had to go through what you've gone through to be where you are right now?
I don't think I can change it, right? I mean, I can change how I see it. And let's say, so kind of, because there's so many different parts of like when I've been sick and when I've gotten better. And, it's like I'm healthy and then I'm not, and then I'm healthy and then I'm not, right? So
Mm.
it's it's always the journey coming back to feeling healthy in the body, right? And like keeping that sanity. And I don't think, I mean, sure, would I have like not had to be sick to do my work? Yeah. But if I were to
Mm.
just keep thinking that way, it creates an energy inside my body of resentment towards the experiences I've been through. And I think
Right.
like the clearest sort of line in the sand for me, and a line in the sand is like when you're saying, okay, I'm ready to move beyond this. I'm ready to move into that next state of energy inside myself. And just in December, so 3 months prior to this, and a couple, just literally like when coronavirus came out in China, I got a
Mm.
viral brain infection, and I had been traveling in Amsterdam seeing a doctor. I do only basically energy work now, so I do bioresonance therapy for my body to clear the leftover bacteria, viruses, parasites, disease states that are still in my body. And then I do something called integrative quantum medicine to help clear the energy in my body now. But in December, when this brain infection, viral brain infection, so it's encephalitis, hit me,
Mm.
I was like, oh my God, wow. Like, I'm done for. Like, there's no way I can live if I don't get my brain back.
And what
And
were the what were the symptoms of that? What how did
I
it leave
had
you feeling?
awful. So it's like fire from the base of my neck. So, like, right where your shoulders meet your neck, all the way into my brain. So, like, someone took a hot, smoldering fire and put it inside me. And then it felt like someone was stabbing a dagger in the top of my head. Um, and then if I were to like use my, like, so to try and cook, if I were to try and use my hands, I would just collapse to the floor. It was too painful. I couldn't be in light. So walking my dog was really challenging. I had to give her to a friend at one point because I
Yeah.
couldn't take care of her. And, some friends made food for me so I could just prepare, like, heat it up. Or I would make like a pot of soup that would last me a week. I lost about 10 kilo in that time frame. I I think, at that moment, I feared never getting better. But the biggest question is, what do I need to learn from this experience? And I
Mm.
just, every single day, that's what I thought about. Instead of living in the panic, yes, of course, there was fear. But I had to come back to the true question of like, what is this disease teaching me? What do I need to know? and how do I want to move forward? And
And that sounds, I mean, sorry to jump in, that sounds
yeah,
like an incredible level of consciousness and awareness to be at, to be thinking that way, because with with your history, and then to be well again and to be hit by this, I can only imagine that must have really tested your resilience
yeah, and
at that point.
obviously I was alone, no family here, and
Oh,
it was the holidays, so all of my friends that I would truly rely on to be there with me were traveling with to their families for the holidays. And so the things that came up for me in that journey, and it was 35 days of darkness basically. The things that came up for me in that journey was, one, this was Christmas Day, and I realized I'd never ever in all of the years that I've gotten sick over and over and over again, I'd never given in to the disease. I'd never given in to the illness. I'd never said, you know what? I just need to be here and I need to rest. And I
right.
rested like I had never rested before. And that brought such peace to my body that I started to recover from that point forward.
No, yeah. So that was as you say, that was different to coping before. This was okay. I don't need to focus on the illness and focus on, I don't know, building my business at the same time. I've got to
Exactly.
listen
Like
to my
when I
body
had the
at this
emergent
point.
hysterectomy, I literally, was home from the hospital a week later, recovering at my parents' house in this like little, special room they had for me to make it really nice and recoverable. But I was staying up late, making sure my Facebook ads were running. I was trying to figure out how things were going. I
Oh
was
God.
studying to make sure my marketing was doing things. And I was living with this panic of how do I survive? How do I get past this? How do I get better? What's going to happen next? How do I make myself better so that I can then make more money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I was fine financially, but I just had to keep pushing myself, and it literally came from
Mm.
like this pit of panic in my chest, like how am I going to survive? How am I going to survive? What if my parents die and I don't have someone that I can go and rest and be at their place? Like what's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
That kind of thinking destroys you. It destroys your soul. It destroys your ability to be truly creative because you have this fire burning of the fear instead of the passion burning of the creation.
Right. So yeah, fear of something rather than I think there are some positive fears, motivational fears that can
Yes.
exist, but when it's neurotic fear,
Yeah.
that's definitely not a good place to be.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And so when I, on Christmas Day, when I got to that, I just remember laying into the sofa and being like, I'm so grateful I have a beautiful home. I live on the sea. I have plenty of food in my fridge. I am comfortable. My neighbors are checking in on me. Like, I am okay. I'm so grateful that I have this situation right now. And two of the biggest fears in my life, like that I would say sort of made me, I'm going to say self recriminate in a way, and hear me out on this one, but I
Mm.
feared being alone for the rest of my life or without a partner, right? And I
Mm.
feared aging. And that's the whole like the beauty myth of like,
Yeah.
we must be youthful forever. And
Yeah. Two very
and
common fears, by the way. I know
yeah,
you know that, but this
for
is you're not the only person to be in that position, I guess.
for sure. I get that for sure. And it's, the alone thing is like, well, I remember dating this guy in New York City, and he was saying like how he was going through a divorce, and he was saying how like when you're interviewing with the HR wants to know if you're married because then they know someone's like can deal with you, is like knows how to put up with you, or I was just like, this is the worst way to even think about someone.
Oh,
But it was
married,
like
must be qualified for this job.
I
I'm
was
not
like,
sure.
oh my, I know. I was like, oh my
I'm
God,
so
am
sure
I
about
thought
that.
because I've never been married, am I thought of as like no one
Yeah.
will put up with me? And it was sort of laying in the back of my head
Oh, I
for
find that hilarious.
a
Put
long.
up ability,
I know,
because
right?
someone is yeah, they made a commitment to you like 10 years ago and they stuck with it.
Yeah, they're just gonna
Sorry,
put up with
I
you.
digress. They're going to
It's
put up with you.
really, I mean, but that was like I was like, oh my God, no one will even put up with me, like that kind of feeling because I've had multiple relationships, some good, but honestly don't really feel like I've ever truly been in love. And so then I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm going to be alone forever. And, but I just like, I literally on that Christmas day, I just was like, I'm alone and I'm totally content. And I'm actually really happy that I don't need to speak to anyone right now. Like
Mm,
I can just be with myself. And that's a
mm,
beautiful thing. And that's only magnified in these times of being in isolation or during the great pause. I'm like, wow, I get to be by myself. How beautiful. That's why I can have peace during this time. I my heart goes out to the world. I mean, the financial destruction that many people
mm.
are facing is just it's heartbreaking to me, and some of the things that we just don't know what's to come, and we will never be the same, but we've also never stopped in our entire history in this way. Like planes are grounded, cars are not moving about at the rate that they normally are, pollution is going
Yeah,
down. It is a beautiful moment, and my heart goes out to all the people that are working so hard to keep the system functioning on the bare
absolutely.
minimum.
So let's dig into more of the business side, if there is such
Mm.
thing as a side. I think it's the whole person, but in terms of what you're doing from a career point of view, and tell us a little bit about what the business is, the shape of it, but also kind of what's happening right now. I'm really interested in what people are talking to you about right now during COVID-19.
Yeah. So my work is really about creating transformation from the inside out. And I do that through personal styling, personal branding, and personal development. And I use the three um, as like this trifecta of not only internal transformation, but external presence and transformation. So, you can sit and meditate all all the hours like you want, but if you're actually not taking action and making this sort of kinetic experience in your world, then it's not coming to life.
Mm.
And so you can be like, oh, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. Well, there's actually energy in your body that needs to come to life. So as the way I style, it's quantum styling. I'm taking the quantum field and I'm teaching women how to apply clothing to their body to enhance their physicality, to enhance their physical presence. We look at colors through the energetic system. We look at clothing about how do we want to support the body, how do we want to release energy in the body, how do we want to enhance energy in the body, and how do we want to protect the energy. It's
Right.
very different
Okay.
than looking in the mirror and saying, my boobs are too big, my butt's too big, I need to lose 15 pounds, I don't look right.
Yeah. So this
Because
this
that's
is
how
very
we're
much sounds like
taught.
what's on the ins the yeah, exactly. I was going to say this is what obviously I think that's mostly laser focused at women, but men get a little bit of that as well. But
Yeah,
that's what media tells you. That's how you're told to think, right? It's
yeah,
about the
yeah,
exterior, the external,
yeah,
not what's going on internally.
yeah. And it's been going on forever. And I mean, if you think of like prostitution as the oldest industry, well, that's kind of like how objectification started. If you
Mm,
read, there's an incredible book by Naomi Wolf, The Beauty Myth, and it really talks about how deep this programming is, and like, how much we're marketed to. Like, I am coming to Spain and living in Ibiza. It's hard to get things shipped here. It's hard to like kind of, you're in a different market. So I'm like less likely to use products for anti-aging. I'm like, I'm going to buy some oils and I'm going to make my own and put some essential oils in there. Like I've started making all my own stuff, like my own salt scrubs and my own sugar scrubs, because,
mm.
well, I just don't want to buy anything from anyone right now. I just want to make my
Yeah.
stuff.
So
But
yeah,
it's
necessity
like,
being the mother of invention. There.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like, we're taught that you need to use La Mer because that's going to keep you youthful, and
Right.
like
Right.
who knows what's in this stuff? And
Mm,
consumerism, I'm beyond curious to know what will happen to consumerism as we move forward through this COVID experience. And um, I've been teaching my clients conscious consumerism over the years because it's about meeting your body's needs is not about filling a void. It's not about following trends. It's not saying, I need this to make me feel better. Even though you're probably not consciously doing that, there's definitely like a subconscious void filling. So I really work on that with my clients
Mm.
to evaluate what they have, how it aligns with their brand, how can they be cohesive and consistent with it. But the biggest thing that I deal with my clients is their identity. I think that that's coming up hardcore right now for a lot of people, is like, who am I? What are my values? What are my priorities? I have all of these experiences. I mean, I've talked about my health experience here, but I also used to run a film union. I used to sell multi-million-dollar real estate over the phone for Ritz-Carlton. Like, I sold $176 million worth of real estate, never meeting one of my clients. We have all these parts of ourselves, and it's like we have to learn how to tell that story in a cohesive way. But how do we represent that internally to feel confident and comfortable? Or how do we represent that externally too, so that we're being true and authentic with who we are and that we're aligned with
Yeah.
our values? Like,
Yeah. And can you break that down a little bit for us in terms of how you go about that process of understanding the identity and looking within and really
yeah.
assessing the energy?
Yeah. So I created a body mapping system, and that's really looking at the energetics, the emotions, and the core story of the body, right? And the whole person, right? I'm looking at,
Mm.
like, okay, where have you been? What have you done in life? Like, what's your position sort of in the world from a financial and psychological, the whole mix, right? What's your demographic, and how do we break barriers? And when we look at the body map of energy, I'm actually I'm meditating with them, and we're going on a journey to look and inspect how they see their own energy and what their experience is. And I'm
Mm.
empathic, so I will have my own, and I'm psychic, so I have my own experience too, which I forgot to say that was the other benefit of the brain infection. I opened up a psychic portal on a whole new level. So I just,
Oh, and this is as recently since December. You've
yeah, I always
presumably.
had it, but I didn't trust it. I didn't know how to believe in it, right? I let,
Yeah.
like, society talk me off the ledge of it and being like, no, 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 that's not real, or you can't
Well, it's
trust
a
that.
tough one to. I think it's a tough one for people to understand and to buy
Yeah.
into. I've had one of my first guests on the podcast. Now, Abby talked about her connection with spirit,
Yeah.
and it was hard enough for me to understand this, and then let alone the people we were talking to, and she worked in finance, in banking. Can you imagine trying to have that
Yep.
conversation with that audience?
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
Intense. Yeah, no, it's super intense. And I don't really open up with it, but I'm a trained medical intuitive and a true medical intuitive. And my own medical experiences only make me even better at that.
Right,
And
right, right.
I've been trained in a few systems around how to track that and how to engage with someone's body and how to help them heal and clear the energy. Integrative quantum medicine being one of them. Um, but the whole, like, getting into the energy of someone's body and seeing, sensing, feeling, hearing. I'm drawing, I'm mapping, I'm like playing stuff, and then I interview them of their own experience and what they saw and felt and heard, and as that we
Mm.
went through the meditation. And then I have them get into the core of their emotions, and we look at where those are in the body and how that is a cluster of energy. And then we look at how their story
Mm.
applies to that, and how the energy and the emotions and the story all play together. So you have like these three separate maps that then start to fuse together, and you see how energy builds up and overlays and plays with itself. So then I start to
Got it.
break down the story, their life experience, and we look at who they are and where they dream of going. And when we're starting to build out that big dream vision, what happens for many people when they're on the path to their big dream is they've reached a little bit too far, and they fall back and self-sabotage, or they fall down and then they say, I can't make it to my dream, right? And so they lose faith
Mm.
along the way, they lose hope, and they're like seeing this thing that's out in the distance, but they can't quite get there. So in my identity system, the style archetyping system, I give them the like next step, not the 10 steps, right, of their identity. So like for
Mm.
me, my first style archetype was a boho warrior, and I, that helps me get to Ibiza. Like if I didn't claim that boho warrior, I mean, I grew up traveling. I lived all over the world with my family. I lived all over the world on my own for my career. I just would I had no qualms. Like I moved to Scotland when I was like 18. I grew up in England. Like I lived in Australia, New Mexico, Hawaii, Los Angeles, Boston, New York. Like
How have you fitted all this in, Carrie? I just don't. It's it's quite a life. I mean,
it is
we need
quite a
about
life.
20
Yeah.
episodes of this podcast to do it justice. I'm very conscious of that, but wow.
Yeah. So when I look at all the experiences, it's like when I got sick, the last 7 years of being sick were like a really intense, like freaking mood, mind, body altering experience. And I had to do everything I could to change that. And that's part of the
Mm,
recovery journey for me, was creating the star archetypes. So I got to
right.
Ibiza and I was like, whoa, I did my boho warrior thing. That's not feeling really like aligned anymore. And so I was like, maybe like I'm a chic goddess, but I'm actually really moving into a chic healer and claiming that like healing part of myself.
Are these part of the identities that you're talking about?
Yeah, so these are they're style archetypes is actually what they're called, and I use an
Right, right,
archetype
okay.
system and a styling system, and I fuse them together based on sort of where we want to present your image to the world and where you need to be. And so it's a dance
Yeah.
of sort of the internal and the external. And through the styling process and through the branding process, we're constantly finding places to represent that and stay aligned and authentic with your inner image and your outer image. That allows a woman just to be in her body, and it removes the judgment. It removes a lot of the fear. It helps them move towards their dreams instead of saying, I can't make it, it's too far.
And does this, this process, which sounds, incredibly whole person, as you say,
Mm.
it's not about the externality at all. It's everything. But this
Yeah,
seems to me, this asks a lot of the client, right? They have to be all in on this.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I work with my clients mostly 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year.
Right.
We usually wrap around 9 months, and then I give them like a 3 month extended, just like integration, a lot less like work on my hand, but it's more of like a hand holding of like, you got this. I'd say in these times, I have extremes of like, I can't commit to anything past 4 weeks because I have no idea what's going to happen on the other side of this, to I need everything changed right now. So there's a lot of pressure to change in this moment, like for me, from people.
Right. Okay. So this, going back, I think we talked about this right up front in terms of what's going on with your clients right now and what you're seeing within COVID-19. And this is it. It's kind of I don't know quite what's going to happen. Well, no one knows in 4 weeks' time. Understand that. Or I got to change everything. I need a response to this thing that I'm not in control of.
Yeah, and it's also, who am I going to be on the other side? And values and
Mm,
priorities are like the foundation of who you're going to be. If you don't know what your values and priorities are, then
yeah.
it's going to be really hard to make a choice. Like
Yeah.
I have my values and priorities have shifted so much in this time, and I'm so
Yeah.
much more at peace with it. And it's just, if that's like where I start with everyone right now.
Yeah, exactly. And bringing it sort of to you on that point about values, what have you seen your biggest value shift during Corona?
I would say I I didn't need a lot before. I need a lot less now. I
Mm,
I don't want to wear things that are synthetic anymore. I'm again back to like living on Ibiza. So when I first moved here, I lost a ton of weight, and it just was sort of like the Mediterranean clearing thing. And so I had all these nice clothes, and then they didn't fit. So I had some tailored, but then you lose so much weight, you just need to buy new clothes. And so the shopping's not great on the island. So I just started buying things at Zara. I was like, okay, I'll just keep filling, and then all of a sudden I have a closet full of, I'm going to say, crap. It's stuff that doesn't last. It's pilling. It's not comfortable. It's like, wow, okay. So now it's like, okay, I need proper cotton. I need proper linen. I need proper silk, all
Mm.
these things, so they don't have to keep rebuying. Because I want sustainability 100% as
Yes.
much as I
Yes.
can. I want to live on the land. I mean, not like in a yurt, but I want, um, I want to be able to walk out and garden. I want to be able to have a lemon tree and an orange tree. Like those things, I want to grow my own food. And I've always
Yeah.
wanted to, but I am beyond motivated now to make it like
Yeah.
a reality. Whereas like, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it'll happen. And I had been looking prior to this. It just, nothing panned out. And I think now I know
Right.
why.
No, it really gives you a sharp focus for that. But I think it comes back to what you were saying about, consumerism pre and post COVID-19. It is going to shift, and I think this discernment about what is really right for me as a person, what is right for the planet, I can see that coming to the fore much more.
Yeah.
More choiceful consumerism.
And like I used to think I really needed a city life and a country life, and I just need the country. And like I need to mind my energy, um, and mind my energy of how much energy I put out into the world, but also like how am I cleaning my own house and internally, and like really making sure that I'm staying present with that and not
Mm.
letting life get in the way, because it's really easy to get up and not meditate and do things and da, 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 and all of a sudden it's like you're leading an unconscious day. And for me, it's like being more aligned with nature is it's just paramount for me.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to ask you about future plans, because obviously, so that sounds like one clear area in terms of that. Just thinking about what you're buying, being closer to nature. Any other things that either you had in mind, or COVID-19 has completely flipped you? This is the direction I'm going to take now.
Yeah, so interesting. So I've been in the process of a rebrand since just before the brain infection. So it's like it's taken pauses because
Hmm.
of, the
For good
deal.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I I'm not 100% clear what it's going to be or what it's going to look like, but I'm working down the road of the restyled life, and it's really taking into perspective of like everything we do, from how we consume to how we eat to how we spend our time to how we empower our bodies, and creating an experience woman around that. um, I think when we look at
Mm.
like style as a 360 experience, that's your essence, that's what you engage in, that's who you engage with. It's not just what you wear. And this is the big thing for me over the years, is that people have said, oh, you're just a stylist, and I'm like, I'm not. Let me tell
Mm.
you what I really do.
Well,
um
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I can imagine that being kind of thrown as a bit of a, I'm not going to say an insult, but almost a demeaning comment. Oh, you're just a stylist, because that's what it says. If I see one word on your website, it says something about style, and the assumptions that are built into that because of our belief systems. But it's
yeah,
clearly a lot deeper than that.
yeah, yeah. But even like I heard Cindy Crawford talk about 360 styles. So it's definitely a term in the sense that like we're looking more holistically
Yeah.
about our physical, mental, and emotional experience. And like I am all about mind, body, spirit. Always have been since my first surgery at 18. Like I had a spiritual experience. I learned that there was something out there in the world beyond just our physical experience. And I've been dancing with
Mm.
that for 25 years. And now I feel like I'm really coming into my own
Right.
sense of comfort and presence and
Yeah.
confidence in that, and like
Yeah.
trusting that journey.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Carrie, this has just been just a fascinating conversation. Thank you again for the honesty and in the storytelling. I always end, and you've talked a little bit around some of the things that you do quite regularly, but I'd love to get a sense from you, some of your habits that you have daily that are really good for your mojo, for your energy.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on too, Richard. This was really amazing. It's great to have this conversation. As for my daily rituals, I don't know if they're always daily, but I have a priority flow. So
Mm.
meditation is definitely a daily one for sure. I do, I get up and I have lemon water and my coffee. Walking my dog is a daily ritual. Like it's not just like she needs to pee. It's like, no, we need to go out and stretch our legs and do our thing. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
like super important. So walking is definitely like a conscious ritual for me. And after having so many surgeries and not being able to walk at times, there's a great beauty in being present and walking. I'm in love with cooking, so that's also like making sure that I'm
Mm.
preparing clean, healthy food. Weekly ritual is watercolor painting.
Oh,
Making sure that
wow.
I'm doing that is and just really learning more around that and what that looks like
Mm.
and exploring it. And then another daily one is writing,
Mm.
getting things out on the page and just out of the mind, is really, really important.
Yeah. So much
And then
health
like,
in mental health in journaling, isn't there? It's such a
yeah,
great thing to do. Think about what we're
yeah. I mean,
grateful for.
and like just moving the body and getting the thoughts out and then harnessing the energy, right? Those three things, like that's all you really need. And then you're ready for anything. And it's making sure that I'm responsible for my own energy. I'm not projecting things on other people, or like if I do feel anxious, it's like, okay, really just look at the situation I'm in. How do I take care of myself first before I get frustrated and project anything on anyone else? Like it's really being self responsible.
Well, I was going to say that word responsible was really coming through for me there in terms of what you're talking about. It's I've got to, uh, look after the self, but also what am I responsible for in terms of what I'm thinking, feeling, doing.
But we all are responsible, right? I mean, I think the world would be such a
Yes.
different place if we took responsibility for how we were feeling instead of projecting our frustrations on other people.
Yeah. Amen to that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Carrie, as I said, we could keep going for a really long time, or a series of podcasts. I feel, and I
Yeah.
know you've done plenty others, and I'm just so thrilled to have you on the show, and all the details of how to find out more about you and get in touch. They'll all be in the show notes. So, Carrie Montgomery, thank you so much for being on the Mojo podcast.
Richard, thank you so much. It was such an honor and a pleasure.
Well, that was just a deeply honest and fascinating conversation with Carrie. Hope you enjoyed it, and to have been through all that she has and to emerge stronger with greater energy and creativity to direct her work supporting women is incredible. So many takeouts. Where do I start? Well, there are certainly three that are coming to mind for me. This move towards a more conscious consumerism that she talked about, which is happening anyway, but I agree with Carrie that this will likely accelerate post-COVID-19. So we'll think about what is essential to meet our body's needs versus perhaps shopping to fill a void. The advice she gives her clients to think about the next step they need to take, not all the steps, to make change seem more achievable. That's really important. And in dealing with COVID-19, encouraging her clients to think about who am I going to be on the other side of this? A tough but brilliant question for all of us right now. And starting this work with an understanding of your values and priorities is great advice. You can find out much more about Carrie and her work at carriemontgomery.com. And of course, she's on Instagram at styledbymonty. All of these links will be in the show notes. I hope you really enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please do subscribe, leave that 5-star rating, and it would be beautiful if you could write a short review on Apple Podcasts. Until next week, I hope your mojo continues to flow.